Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bald Monkeys Wrestling Podcast, and I think it's important to point out that it's boss time. It's boss time, isn't it, Chris? We have Steven the Boss Hill back with us this week. We missed him. We missed him last week. We call him the boss because it's the name of his favorite wrestler.
He's the only boss now. He's the only boss that's present.
I know. I think he kicked the other boss out of WWE.
Sad world we live in.
So before we get too into the WWE stuff this week, I want to put a tiny bit of a spotlight on AEW. And apparently AEW is getting ready to sign a deal, or they basically have it done. They just haven't announced it yet, where they're going to be on TNT. Most likely this deal is going to roll out in October is when they're going to start showing. And I know that they had trademarked like, Tuesday Dynamite or something like that. I might have gotten that wrong, but I think this is pretty exciting stuff. This is something that I think the WWE has needed very, very badly for a very long time. Like a very credible threat. Not to say that AEW is ever going to overpower WWE, especially at the beginning, but there's so few TV wrestling promotions that I've watched that I feel actually kind of like hold water. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, you were right with Tuesday Night Dynamite. That is what they've trademarked. So the assumption is that's what they're going for. But yeah, man, you're dead on as far as like what has been able to go up against them with competition. Not to say that I think we have to be careful and put a little pause on how successful AEW is going to be out of the gate, right? They got the names, they got the push, but until we start seeing a product and production quality, it could just be another TNA. You know, it could be something that's good for if you're just looking for a wrestling fix, but not necessarily quote unquote competition.
Yeah, well, in that aspect, TNA's kind of downfall was when they started pulling in the WCW names, thinking that was going to put them at the next level. Be a slow build to an extent, but unknowns to go all in on it, pun intended.
Boo.
They have an interesting roster, and one of the wrestling rosters that I was most impressed with until it became kind of difficult to watch because we couldn't find the content very easily was Lucha Underground. And I know we've talked about Lucha Underground before, and there is a number of good Lucha Underground wrestlers that they have signed over to AEW, and there's a number of really good wrestlers from New Japan that they've signed over, and a bunch of people that are just really good independent wrestlers that you kind of see all over the place that they've signed to AEW. So the roster, if this was a WWE product, we'd be like, oh my god, the roster's like oversaturated with good talent and they're wasting talent. Like they might actually run into that problem.
Well, at least they're not falling into the trap of what Steven was mentioning and signing a lot of elder talent. You know, they did get some name recognition with Jericho and obviously Cody's there, but it's a good thing that they're not just automatically signing every guy who's leaving WWE or asking to be released by WWE, because that's the trap, right? That's the don't just pull all the guys over that WWE wasn't interested in protecting, because there's a reason why WWE doesn't protect guys. And it's a short list of guys that I think have made it outside of WWE after WWE said, no thanks, we don't want you.
Right. And another thing too is I want to know the extent of these contracts. Like how many years, what's the non-compete and all that kind of stuff. Because with a lot of these indie guys, this could be the first time Vince and the powers that be see them. So if they have these little, maybe a year-long contract with AEW, and this gives them that much exposure, just turning into a developmental for WWE all over again. So it's very, there's too many unknowns and uncertainties right now in it. Like they could be done in a year just because everybody gets.
Well, let's be, but also this is like WWE feels like it's a threat, right? Because like Tony Storm was supposed to have a match coming up, and they're not allowing her to have that match because it's against an AEW contract wrestler. It's the first time they've pulled somebody that was about to have one of these matches, because they've been allowing some of these NXT folks to have these independent matches against some other contracted people, but not AEW wrestlers. So I feel like Vince and even Triple H are not interested in promoting AEW at all, even though they're able to joke about it. They do think it's a bit of a threat. Now I don't know if it's as big of a threat as, you know, the old WCW days when WCW was beating them. I think it's very similar to Ring of Honor and New Japan, where they feel like, yeah, it's another alternative wrestling program out there, but they're still, you know, they're still WWE. They're still the leader.
Oh yeah, nobody's touching them, and that's not going to change.
Well, the interesting thing I think is that WWE is at one of its most vulnerable positions that I've seen it in, at least since I've been friends with you guys and we've been watching wrestling. I mean, it's had its ups and downs, but
We're not friends.
man, there you go. See, we're not friends. There you go. There you heard it first, listeners. Big Baby Jimmy,
That's
not friends with Christopher.
Not the first time I've said that. I've definitely not said that only once. I've said that multiple times. So
Okay.
but
All right. I understand.
It's a
I understand.
recurring theme.
Okay, but my transition, before you rudely interrupted me by telling me that I was in fact not your friend, was to say they are at their most vulnerable position in a very long time since I've been watching wrestling. It's been really, really bad. And it's almost like they panicked after last week and how bad it was. And so they decided, how do we fix a bad week of wrestling? Let's bring a bunch of people onto both shows and have another bad week of wrestling.
it's the wild card rule.
Oh, yeah,
That's
the
stupid.
wild card.
From my understanding, they're getting a lot of from the networks, Fox and USA, about rosters already. They're wanting them to be done with the brand split and just mix it together. Those storylines, not you have to wait a week. You could do Monday night and tune in, you know, some
Right.
more action for it instead of the back and forth having
Right.
to wait so long.
Which isn't a bad idea, right? Like that's not a terrible idea to have the roster be full
Especially
again.
if they're going to make SmackDown be in 3 hours too, but then you run into both shows are crammed full of the same 8 people.
I don't think they're
Squeezing
making
their tags.
SmackDown 3 hours though. I think Fox is going to keep it at 2. I think that was always the plan. Fox,
Sure.
But
Fox.
let's-
I mean, as a network television, I mean, they're looking for specifically it being on Friday, right? If you logic that out, like specifically, it's on one of the hardest days of the week to put programming on. Friday is not easy, and I think Fox's history would show that the last time that they had a really successful show on like a Friday was probably like back in the X-Files days when the X-Files was on Fridays. So they're taking a product that they know is going to bring viewership. Like wrestling fans, they're going to watch wrestling. You know, if they it's still going to be like you're going to lose some here and there. But I think they're a pretty consistent fan base, wrestling fans are. So it's something that you can put in a time slot and say, yeah, that's going to be our solid, workhorse on Friday nights, and we just don't have to worry about programming, and we can focus, on the other days of programming instead.
Oh,
But what is that? How does that relate to the panic that they just had? Yes, I understand that there's some pressure from the networks, but wouldn't that be pressure to put a better product on TV and a better storyline and better programming, which ultimately this wild card rule and whatever they panicked and tried to do this week really didn't accomplish at all? I don't know that it was any better than the previous week. I feel like it was forced, it was confusing, and maybe there was one or two items that I could pick out that worked, but other than that, it was a mishmash of 2 nights of wrestling.
I think that it was a tale of two different shows. I thought that Raw was incredibly worse than the previous week's Raw, and I thought that SmackDown was fine. I thought SmackDown had good matches on it, and that's what ended up what saved SmackDown as a whole. But I was thinking about this week, and I was thinking about something fun to do for this podcast, and so I want to go over, in particular, since Raw was so bad, the spots that they did on Raw, and how you think they could have done it better, specifically. So, our opening of Raw, we have Vince McMahon come out. He talks for a little bit, and then Roman Reigns comes out, and then you have Daniel Bryan come out, and then you have Kofi Kingston come out, and then you have, in all of this, he's seeing these three people come over, and he goes, oh, this makes me think of a good idea, a wild card rule. We'll have 3 people come over here, and then 3 people go over to the other show. Yes, this is a great idea. I'm a genius. This obviously was a failure of a spot. The whole spot, the thing is, to me, I felt like it was kind of working initially until they added that stipulation kind of into it. Like, I had no issue with Roman Reigns being there. I mean, we knew that it was a stretch for ratings. Like, ratings are sucking, so we're going to have Roman Reigns come over. But it was like, okay, the last time we saw them in a ring together, Roman Reigns Superman punched Vince McMahon. So there was some business there that could have taken care of and could have created a good promo. Then having Daniel Bryan come out, who we hadn't seen in a very long time, since he lost to Kofi, I think was equally pleasing. For me, where it got lost was once Kofi came out. I'm like, Kofi, what the fuck are you doing here? Like, why is it just so happens that no matter what he says, why is it just so happens that Daniel Bryan wants to come out and complain, which I think is a better written storyline point, that Kofi just so happens to be there too, and he's going to come out and kind of challenge that.
Well, it's what you said it was. It's that reach for ratings, and who's more over than Kofi right now?
That makes no sense to me, by the way.
The fact that he's over.
Yeah, but
because you can't dispute that he's over.
He's over. He's over.
Yeah, you can't dispute that he's over. It's the question of why. Why is everyone still so behind him after they're laying it on? They're laying it on as thick as they lay on Roman Reigns to us, and we revolt against it, right? But for whatever reason, we don't with Kofi, and maybe it's just because it's new, and eventually it's going to get to that point. But I agree. I don't understand it, but he's over.
I think the difference between him and Roman is he's been there. He's put the time and effort in, where Roman was just pushed down his throats.
I guess, what I view it as, though, from a story perspective, back when we were making our picks for WrestleMania, I was very certain that, only maybe one of the 3 main baby faces were going to win their match. It just so happened that all 3 won their match. So I was wrong, and I admitted I was wrong on the next episode of the podcast, but this is the problem. Because just because you enjoy something does not mean it's best for story. So just because the fans love Kofi Kingston and Kofi Kingston's over doesn't mean that he needs to be champion. That doesn't make the best story. What the fans like does not make the best story, because if you just if you have a little kid and all you do is give them stuff over and over and over and over and over again, is that any way to raise a kid? I view the same way as being a fan of wrestling. So I like it sometimes when they have people that I hate. I like it when they have people that other people hate. Like, Chris, we've talked about, you really hated Big Cass, but that's a good reaction to have sometimes. Like, really disliking a wrestler is a good thing. The fact that we all have wrestlers that we kind of despise in certain moments is a good thing. Can't just love everybody.
Can't we all just get along?
I mean, I don't know, Steven. I mean, do you think I'm just totally off base with that idea?
And I think the way they've been booking Kofi at this point, he won't be a one and done champion. So they can have, you know, a storyline where he drops it and you get run from somebody and you can build toward things. They have to. And honestly, I thought they were doing it, and I was gonna flip out if Sammy did it. Oh,
Um, I thought that was the right move,
so did
actually.
And I'm a big Kofi supporter. I was a Kofi supporter before he was even in the title picture. I think for the story itself, it made sense having the belt at Money in the Bank would be great, and then you have next week to have Kofi win his way into Money in the Bank case match, and maybe he could win it, or you know, come close to winning it, and you can help build him back up as an underdog for SummerSlam or something. But
Yeah,
they're
it,
gonna have that big baby face moment. You know, they always try to have at least one.
sure, sure. You know,
I
and
don't know.
to kind of build off one of those things, like you kind of agreeing that maybe it was the correct move for Sami Zayn to win that match. I think when you listen to the crowd during that match, they have the exact same reaction. And even though Kofi's so over, the energy through that crowd when he almost beat Kofi, like it was almost like there was a surge of people almost wanting Sami Zayn to win. You know,
Yeah.
because it's more interesting. It's that makes
And
the
just
interesting
just like
product.
Chris, Kofi's getting the Roman Reigns treatment. He took 3 Blue Thunder bombs and still kicked out. So either they're trying to make Sammy look weak, or they're trying to make Kofi look strong.
Yeah.
A strong
But
character.
but
That's not his character arc.
but do you really believe Kofi can win these matches? Do you really believe Kofi's strong? Like, yeah, he's kicking out of a ton of big moves, but is it believable? Like, I don't know. When Roman Reigns was kicking out of stuff, I believed it. When Kofi kicks out of stuff, I believe he's the underdog, but I don't expect him to win. Like, it's nice. It's a nice underdog story, but at some point, it's a little like unbelievable that he's kicking out of everything.
I believe he's got the will to win, but with any underdog, that will story, that will's got to be defeated sometimes. He's got to just be beat down. They did it with The Rock when he was a babyface. They would have him take damage and damage and damage, and then eventually somebody, Triple H, would beat him, or Big Show would beat him.
Makes me think that KO is going to take the belt off of him. Like, he's been so beaten down that eventually he's not going to be able to kick out, and it's going to be KO to take the belt from him.
Okay.
I know they
so-
wanted
Oh,
to do
the sigh,
whole angle.
the sigh. I got the sigh out of him.
Yeah. I believe, I don't want to say I know, I believe they wanted to do the angle where Big E turns, but Big E got hurt. They could do it where Xavier turns on him. Like Xavier just can't get there to help him. Beaten from KO. And he keeps taking beatings for Kofi.
He's been
Kofi loses
taking
the
a
belt, and
beating.
let
Yeah.
Xavier and Kofi have a little bit of a feud going into the summer. It could help both characters.
Sure. I mean that definitely is a storyline
more
that's better.
believable,
It's better than
yeah.
what they're doing right now, right? Which is a whole bunch of malarkey. I don't know.
Yeah, because I
I'm
mean,
all-
after KO stuff, who do you put in a feud with Kofi right now? I love Kofi to death. It's like a good feud with Kofi for the title at this point.
Honestly, a lot of the guys
Like the Big E
that,
angle
that
thought sounded great in my head, but now that Big E's gone,
Jim likes.
I don't think it's
It's a lot of your favorites. I think it's like the Ali's and the Andrades and those guys would be great feuds with Kofi right now.
they might
and
be
those
setting
would've
that
been
up,
good
by the way.
Those would have been great feuds to start. Like, it would have made more sense to do that right out of the gate than this KO one. Like I think that would have been believable, and that would have worked Kofi up a little bit with a little more matches and a little more believability of him being the guy who can overcome the odds. Going right into getting his butt kicked by KO and getting 4 blue thunder bombs and still kicking out. I get what they're trying to do, but I just don't think it's as believable as if he was just
that's what
barely
I'm saying.
beating Cien Almas, just barely beating Ali. You know, those would have been great.
At this point, you have him in a feud with KO, and if he beats KO, then Ali just doesn't make sense beating him at this point. Andrade doesn't make sense because he's already beat the big guy.
Well, they could be cash-ins
And
because any of those
Ah.
guys could win. The thing with Ali is this: I noticed when they were playing his promo on SmackDown that he kept mentioning getting his opportunity taken away from him. He mentioned it like a couple times. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know, you could work that into doing a cash in. I don't know that that's good for him because in that Andrade match, like that match was going pretty good and the fans were into it and the fans were into him. And I don't know that Ali as a heel works, at least not the iteration that we have right now.
No, I think Ollie's up on the ladder, and you think you're going to get the feel good moment, and then like Finn or somebody knocks him off, somebody you don't expect to make kind of a heel move, but they're trying to win.
Orton.
Ollie versus Finn for the
Corbin.
IC title for a little while.
Yeah.
I mean, you could put anybody in the title matches with Finn, and they'd be entertaining. I wouldn't mind seeing Finn actually win the briefcase and then carry that around for a while, and then have the opportunity to still defend the Intercontinental title or defend the briefcase. It flexes it a little bit where he can defend one or the other and lose one and still carry the other.
Yeah, and I get that, but I believe it's being faces. I think it's going to be a heel. I think it's either going to be Drew who win the Money in the Bank. They make the most sense right now.
Which usually means they're not going to win.
Yeah.
Because here comes the Monster in the Bank to break Jimmy's heart.
I don't know. I mean, I other than my one argument, don't think Corbin makes a lot of sense, but I think that's why I think he's going to win it. You know, just because of that one little mini feud that's about to blow off. Like, so they're going to make it come to fruition because they love their heels, but they don't know what the hell to do with their faces.
Their tour they're doing right now overseas, Rollins keeps facing off with Corbin. So, I mean, they're letting their chemistry build. So I could see that.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that he has to have the briefcase. He could just be Rollins' next match that he has, and they could carry the briefcase with somebody else. I'm with you though. Just like let's have a heel with the briefcase. It's just more fun when a heel has the briefcase because the other option is an underdog, and I don't know if there's an underdog that I really need to have it right now. You know,
well, not just that. I mean, if you give an underdog the briefcase, somebody's making a heel turn because face versus face isn't a good story.
It can be. He's got to write it right. That's where they've veered off with Rollins and AJ. Is they think,
bailed on it quick. Yeah.
They think that it needs to be heel versus face, or they set it up that way, and it really doesn't. It's just here's an incredible wrestler. Here's an incredible wrestler. Let's have an incredible match. Sometimes it can be that easy.
Yeah, but what they're writing lately, they're firing people. They can't get nothing consistent. The ratings have been crap.
Okay, so going back to the beginning of Raw, how would you have fixed that segment?
I don't force what they forced. I think would have been interesting is Daniel Bryan showing up and Daniel Bryan using that as his platform to complain. But the idea that you have to shove like everybody onto that show, you know, to get ratings. I get the Roman Reigns thing because he was doing it through social media, but then let Daniel Bryan come out, but exclude Kofi from the conversation because you easily could have just had Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns out there, and then mix in McIntyre and Rollins, and I'd rather see some face to face with those guys going at it. It just, I don't know that that would fix anything. I just think it would have made more sense for the program, because now you're just blurring the lines between SmackDown and Raw. Like, what happens next week on Raw? I feel like if you don't see Kofi on Raw next week, it's going to be confusing, right? Because he's basically just showing up everywhere. So I think it's limiting the amount of people that you're really going to have crossover, because it's not going to make sense going forward. Again, I don't know if that makes it better, like immediately that night, but I think going forward it makes more sense.
I think the rule's stupid. Like, I could have done without the whole opening segment.
I think the opening segment could have been simplified, and when you have a really long promo like that, which was like 30 minutes long or something like that, when you have a really long promo like that, I believe the best way that you could have done it is the anti-promo, and especially when you know Roman Reigns is coming back. The best thing that they could have done was have Vince McMahon go out there, get halfway through a promo, and Roman Reigns interrupts. He walks all the way down to the ring, and Vince tries to talk to him again, and he just immediately attacks Vince again. You know, short, sweet, simple. You know, if you want to have McIntyre, it doesn't matter though. That's better than what they did. It doesn't make it doesn't make it any less effective if they manage it the right way. And mismanagement is the name of their game recently. But
like, I understand recycling storylines, but give it more than 4 or 5 years. Same people. It's Roman with the Superman punch to Vince again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. KO with the headbutt to Vince.
Triple H for Drew McIntyre.
I mean, KO doing the headbutt to Vince. It's the same thing too.
What did that opening segment give us? That's always like, I'm trying to always ask, where do we go from here? What does that add to? What did that opening segment
gave us WrestleMania rematches?
How did it help anything out? And that was stupid, in my opinion. Like, what about those WrestleMania matches were so memorable? So I guess to use your, and to agree with your argument that you were just making, Steven, having Kofi Daniel Bryan again made zero sense. And the problem was that it was probably one of the better matches that night, but it really doesn't make sense to have that match because we already saw it. Why do we want to see it again? It's not built up as like a, hey, more story has happened and now we're having a rematch. It's, no, he's just back and we're immediately having a rematch. There's nothing added to it. Yeah, there's nothing that was added to it.
Daniel Bryan could have came back at Money in the Bank and cost either one, Kofi or Kevin Owens, the title. And that's how he could come back, and that's how he could restart his feud or get his rematch or whatever it might be. A one-off match on Raw for him to just have against Kofi, which was a sloppy ending, I think, as well with the finish. It was a waste. It was a throwaway, and it proves the point that I don't even know that the WrestleMania match was perfect or the right setup. I think the celebration was what Kofi got out of it and what everybody got out of it, but I still just don't see those two headlining WrestleMania or headlining another pay-per-view going forward. Kofi had his moment and it almost fell flat afterwards.
That's what I'm saying. Like, other than having a big heel for him to face, no storyline really makes sense for Kofi going forward. That's why you need him to drop the belt. And I think the reason they threw Daniel into it was to try to the title picture to pull him out of that because they were throwing him into the tag division now.
The tag division's a mess too. It's like they just don't care about tag team wrestling. It drives me a little bit insane when I watch. You got fine tag teams on both shows that you can have matches, but instead you're going to do this promo where you just hand a tag team a belt and bring the tag team that you sent over to Raw back
Who's in the
just to
middle
have
of
a
a
match.
storyline on Raw?
Like, seriously? Like, that's what you're doing for the tag team division right now? Like, we argue that they have all this talent and it's an influx of talent, but they don't use any of them. They're using the same people on both shows, and it makes no sense.
You know, it's funny how I came to the conclusion that this episode of Raw was worse than the last one was we talked about last week's episode, and I said there was only 2 segments that I really liked. You know what I mean? It was the Bray Wyatt stuff, the Firefly Funhouse, and then the Sami Zayn stuff. Well, they took the Sami Zayn stuff this week and they ripped it up and threw it in a dumpster. Pun intended.
What was the point of that? What did that do?
It accomplished nothing.
And even more annoying was the fact that he just shows up on SmackDown and that's it. He's just okay.
And,
like
and
there
that's
was no
why it would have made more
lead.
sense for him to win the belt on SmackDown, because then he's away from Raw. Braun got rid of him on Raw.
Makes no sense.
It is still not good.
No sense.
It was
It's
bad
not
from
good,
the
but that's
get-go.
something that-
My vision of what that story was going to be was that before anybody came and shut him up, somebody that you didn't expect was going to go out and agree with him. And Braun Strowman would have been the perfect person. Braun Strowman coming out there and everybody goes, oh yeah, he's getting ready to get his butt beat by Braun Strowman. And then Braun Strowman goes out there and says, I agree with you. And then stands behind Sami Zayn. And that the fans would have booed up a storm, and it would have been good writing.
Don't you feel like they just like were sitting around and Vince was just talking and like, all right, we need to get ratings up. And he's, what are we going to do? You know what we're going to do? We're going to get Braun to go out there and just throw Sammy into a dumpster. That'll be great. They'll laugh. I'll laugh. That'll be funny. Let's do that. Like it made no sense. Like he was just trying to figure out how to make everybody pop or laugh. And the first thing that came to his mind is throw somebody in a dumpster. I just, it bothers me so much because like you said, Sammy's promos have been great. Sammy's character is building. They're allowing it to build. And then they just take Braun Strowman and literally just squash it for no reason. If it was a reason, if they were building towards something, and maybe they still are, but why Braun Strowman, Sami Zayn? Why? What do you need that for? Does that make any sense? Sami Zayn never even cleared up his whole feud with Bobby Lashley. So we're going to put Braun Strowman in there instead. It would have made more sense for Lashley to come out and to your point, agree with him. That would have been great if Lashley came out and they both got heat, because those are 2 guys that'll get tons of heat.
Yeah.
The Braun Strowman thing, man, it makes no sense and it's frustrating. And
how much you want to bet Braun cuts a promo going into Money in the Bank about taking the trash out?
Well, WWE when WWE tweeted the bit or whatever on their Twitter, it was hashtag Monster Among Garbage Men. Boo!
Wow, that's forced.
Yeah.
Wow, that's forced. Like they're reaching.
It's funny that you talk about some of these. I don't know, like kind of hokey storylines. There's something that has been getting kind of a negative reaction that really hasn't been bugging me that much, which is the whole Revival Usos stuff. I don't hate that stuff, like at all. Like the back shaving stuff and the, I guess, them putting like, some type of hot thing in their trousers or whatever and making them freak
it
out.
It reminds me of like Eddie and Chavo and Edge and Christian back when tag team division was good.
It reminds me of old school. Yeah, it reminds me kind of some old school like Attitude Era promos, but it's been getting a lot of negativity. And I'm like, I remember when wrestling was kind of like this a little bit. There's a difference between something that, okay, maybe not everybody likes, but is mildly entertaining versus the Braun Strowman thing, which is like, oh, we've seen Braun do this a million times. He gets somebody, he traps them somewhere, and he basically murders them, but then they just show back up. Like, that's not entertaining anymore. Yeah, how many times can he flip a car before you're like, okay, Braun, we've seen you flip a car before?
But he can't pick up Samoa Joe, but he can flip a car.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you know me, with the Revival. I'm a supporter. I like them. They're a throwback, and I think this program is a throwback as well.
Yeah.
80s, 90s tag team wrestling, 80s, 90s heels were comical. They were doing goofy stuff because back in the day you weren't doing crazy athletic stuff. You were building a whiny heel character, and the best way to do that is to get pranks pulled on you. It was the days of ribs in the back, and now they were bringing ribs out into the spotlight because it was entertaining, because people enjoyed laughing as much as they enjoyed cheering or booing their favorite or least favorite wrestlers. So it works. I mean, sure, it's getting negative feedback because it looks like they're burying the Revival, just like they buried Dean before he left. So that's what I think everybody's concerned about, because that's the rumor now, is the Revival turned down a deal. So now it looks like they're just getting buried. But I'm digging it. It's fine. It's putting the Revival on TV every week. I'm sure it'll turn into some good matches with them and the Usos. Wait till they actually have a legitimate match with the Usos and the Revival. I bet you we're going to be raving about it.
Yeah, I think it is going to be a very good program once they actually start fighting each other.
But that brings me to the other tag teams going on Raw. I mean, you still have the Viking Raiders out there. And again, they get another huge pin on the tag champs, Ryder and Hawkins. And it's like,
who are Hawkins and Ryder? Who are they? Who's Hawkins
who
and
are they?
Ryder?
The tag team champions.
Oh, yeah, those guys. I forgot about them.
The tag team champions.
They haven't focused on them very much.
No, but they got a match and they got pinned. So it's very obvious that the Viking Raiders are getting a huge push, which they deserve.
Yeah, I'm fine
but
with
I
it.
still dispute the fact that they're heels. It makes no sense to me, and I don't think it was good writing. I don't think it was a good program build, because you have guys show up on Raw and we're supposed to just be convinced that they're heels, with them not really doing any heel activity. Like, what makes a heel, right? A team that cheats, that takes shortcuts, that comes and beats people up without them looking. What are the Viking Raiders doing right now that makes them heels? I just don't get that, other than them saying that they're heels and bad guys.
Nothing really. I don't think that they're gonna be heels for that long. The crowd's facing them. It's gonna happen. So that's just a matter of time. But you talk about bad tag teams. What about Lucha House Party? How about them getting a big win against a bunch of jobbers in a match that took all of 30 seconds?
It's a month of jobbers, man.
Hey,
2 weeks in a row we get jobber tag teams. One on the women's side, one on the men's side, and neither one of them made. And like, what was the point of that? That was the time slot they wanted to put Lucha House Party on? Like, for what? Was that the ratings poll?
It's like a tale of two jobbers on that episode of Raw, because the Lucha House Party beating the jobbers in a minute made less than 0 cents. It's like Lucha House Party have gotten no type of a push. Why would they all of a sudden they be facing jobbers in a match where they just win and they all hit their signature moves and they all look strong, and because they look kind of cool? Like, it served no purpose, and I don't know that anybody that I know really enjoyed that match at all. Whereas you then have Lacey Evans, where the promo wasn't, I mean, the whole package promo, like with the women in the back and they get their invitations, it's like, okay, it wasn't perfect, but I feel like the segment served its purpose. Like, okay, yeah, they go out to the ring, and then there's Lacey Evans, and she's facing a jobber, and she destroys the jobber. Well, that served a purpose, you know? How does that jobber help Lacey Evans versus how did those jobbers help Lucha House Party?
Okay, so number one, WWE was so not interested in that Lucha House Party match that it's not even in the results on their website. I'm going to point that out. Number one. Didn't even happen according to the results on the website. Two, to answer your question, Lacey Evans brought out everyone in the Money in the Bank to show them how much of a threat she is. And they utilized a jobber who took a really stiff punch.
Yeah.
Which looked great. So that made sense. That built Lacey Evans up, and it worked well. Where the Lucha, I couldn't even tell you, you reminding me that they all did their finishers was the only reason I even knew that happened. I didn't even remember that they did their finishing moves. I had no clue how they even won that match against those jobbers because it meant nothing. And that would have been a perfectly good time slot to let a guy like Cedric Alexander have a little bit of time and let him wrestle a jobber.
Who's Cedric Alexander again?
I think he's related to Buddy Murphy.
Oh, who's Buddy Murphy? Wait a second. Are those the two guys that I ask where they are every single week on this podcast? Oh yeah,
Go
those
ahead.
guys. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Hey,
you got one more.
Cedric Alexander, where are you? Buddy Murphy, where are you? Fandango, where are you?
I'll do you two better. Where were the Iconics this week? Tag team champions. Not on TV this week.
Those titles nobody cares about.
They mean nothing.
I don't think any title
The
means
women's
anything anymore.
division is a mess.
There is not a single title on the card that I actually care about right now. They haven't done anything to help any title, any of them. Not even Rollins' title. Nothing.
I'll give you that, but I still love to see Samoa Joe come out there and cut a promo against anybody. So I'll still say Samoa Joe is keeping the United States title relevant in the little spots that he has.
I do have one issue with Samoa Joe, though, or at least that segment. And maybe WWE didn't want to do it. But I don't think that Samoa Joe should have just talked to Ray's son. I think he should have just attacked him. I think that would have made for a better story. Just attack him. Even if you don't have to show them him attacking him, it showed him following him.
Yep.
And then when it
That's
comes
the
back,
one.
he's on the ground and he's clearly like shaken up and has been beat up. And, you know, Mysterio's like, what happened? What happened? What happened?
Yeah.
That
Or you don't even have to show that. You don't have to show him on the ground. You can just show him, you just have an announcer come out and say, just breaking news. Rey Mysterio's son Dominic was rushed to the hospital. Apparently something happened in the back, but no one's sure exactly what happened. We'll bring you more when we have more information. And that's it. Like, don't show anything. Just show that image of Joe like charging behind him, and then cut it out, and then bring an announcer out, and that's it. You don't need to show anything. It's let our imaginations work.
absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
It just drives me nuts, man. It's so easy. It's so easy. Like every little thing that we watch these last couple weeks, it's like I can just take one little thing and twist it and make it 10 times better. I feel like they're phoning it in, or it's this weird transition period where they're just trying to get through the next pay-per-view, and hopefully they figure things out.
I don't even know at this point, though, what is the right course of action for the pay-per-view to make WWE even palatable right now, though. It's hard to watch. It's hard to watch. We do this podcast, so I watch WWE every week, but there were a couple times I wanted to turn it off this week. But I kept watching it. I did what I had to do.
I got to admit, I didn't watch all of SmackDown this week. I went back and used the old Hulu to fast forward through the matches, specifically to see if the Iconics showed up in a promo or anything. And I will say that I did stop for a moment to laugh my ass off at Matt Hardy's reaction to Lars Sullivan behind Truth.
There he is. It was bizarre.
How long until Lars is gone, do you think?
It's not long now. From what I hear and what he said, not long now.
What? What?
Everything he said. He said so much.
What are you talking
Let's
about?
Steven, please let's inform Jimmy of all the ridiculousness that all the Hulk Hogan-esque stuff that Lars Sullivan has
Where's the Hogan?
Well, I wouldn't.
Hogan
I
just said
wouldn't.
the N-word.
I wouldn't say any of that stuff verbatim on here, please.
Yeah, don't say it verbatim, but
No,
I
no.
just controversial. I'm not saying he said verbatim things Hogan said, but controversial as Hogan.
He said some racial stuff, some sexist stuff, some homophobic stuff.
I
About a
would
lot of people,
have-
including Vince and his family, and yeah, he said a lot.
I would have two questions for that. When did he say it, and did WWE already know about it?
2011, I think it was.
Did WWE know
And
about
it was 2011, and I believe they're saying it was on some like in some chat rooms, like I don't know, some bodybuilding chat rooms under an alias or something.
I don't think they knew
Um,
about it because as soon as it
no.
came out, he immediately made a public apology to Vince and WWE.
Well,
It's
we'll
interesting
see.
that WWE, like, you make a good point, like Jim, like, how does WWE not know about this stuff? Like, how does this stuff just like surprise them all the time, and like just all of a sudden just air?
Well, I think they knew Hulk Hogan was a racist beforehand.
Probably, and they just have to react to when they find stuff sometimes. I think there's a lot of times that they do know most stuff, and I think the times when WWE gets caught with their pants down is usually when they react too fast to a situation and they don't understand the gravity of the situation before they've done it. Perfect example of that is the Chris Benoit situation. You know, you can't even see
Wow.
records of that anymore. You know, because
You can't search for his name on the network or
Yeah.
anything.
I mean, they basically were, revering the guy the day after he died until like all the details came out, and then they had to totally reverse it. That's them reacting a little bit too fast.
Which is interesting because I know there's been some conversations from some people that they would like to see Benoit in the Hall of Fame, which I believe will never happen. You can't. I believe Vicky Guerrero actually was interviewed, and she had mentioned that she would love to see Chris Benoit in the Hall of Fame, and you just can't.
That'll
Is it-
happen about as soon as Pete Rose gets into the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Which do you realize the ridiculousness of that comparison?
It is a ridiculous comparison. I agree, but the fact
one
is,
guy gambled
I know.
and the other guy killed people.
Yep,
So I kind of think that's uneven.
I do think it's uneven. Hey, Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. Sorry to break into baseball, people. Back to wrestling.
That's okay. We baseball. Hey, how about some hockey? Hockey playoffs, really good. We can talk about whatever we want to talk about, wherever the conversation takes us.
Oh man.
Like how much I hate the Carolina Hurricane.
How about some Firefly Funhouse? How about we talk about some Firefly Funhouse?
Yes.
It's the one
Wowie.
good thing. Yowie, wowie. It's one of the few good things every week, and I feel like everybody's just always looks forward to it.
Yeah, it's very much the highlight, I think, of the week. I enjoy that Bray has taken social media and pulled it in as well. So he's almost building to his promos every week with his social media presence. And good call out by you, James, because you had mentioned the voices in the first few promos that he pulled. It's obvious that they got rid of the original voices and made them Bray voices. But I like the idea that it's his different personalities, like the voices in his head, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And they killed the one that basically wasn't a voice in his head, which is interesting. So we'll see where it goes from here. But another good Firefly Funhouse promo. We found out the sombreros are specifically for the kids to wear during their picnic. Thanks for the question out there, listeners. And we thought it was going to be a throwaway. Essentially, it wasn't. They actually used it for the picnic, which the kids looked like crazy stone-faced and like not having fun whatsoever.
Oh, it was wonderful.
And then even Bray does a little pet to his lamb that he has with him. So I did see something for the first time. I noticed that it looks like a rocking chair under the blanket that is under the window where Abby the Witch is. So I'm wondering if we're gonna have some kind of throwback to him in the rocking chair. Now I don't know who's going to be in the rocking chair, but it definitely looks like one of the rocking chairs he used to sit in or bring out to the ring.
Yeah, it's man, it just keeps building. Like this is how you write story. You give it time, you give little by little, you keep you want people to tune in just to see that. And that's what gets me tuning into Raw because they're just going to mirror it on SmackDown. So all you got to do is watch one of the shows to see it once. And it hasn't been disappointing at all. It's been crazy, man. That the kids were creepy. The kids just all stone face sitting there. It was like this is great.
I just hope he doesn't wrestle anytime soon. Like I don't want to see him wrestle for at least another month. Like give me 4 more weeks of promos. Like you don't need to wrestle. There's no gain from him getting in the ring right now. And there's plenty of gain from him continuing these programs.
I would have said the same thing about Sami Zayn.
And then maybe Braun Strowman's going to come out and throw Mercy in the garbage dump or whatever, the garbage pail. Oh, WWE, what are you doing to us? What do you think about the voices idea that you had brought up? Like, do you think it's going to be a situation where I know he's got the gloves on, right? Where it's
Hurt. What is heel,
It's
I think
Hurt and heel. So basically, when Hurt talks to him, he basically does something violent. I don't know that we've seen heel speak to him, but I'm just wondering if the voices are going to come to fruition where he basically comes out as different characters.
Now, the Hurt heel thing, I always take that back to Night of the Hunter. You ever heard of that movie before? Old Robert Mitchum movie. And
is it a horror film?
Ish. It's kind of like an old timey kind of thriller, I guess. But he plays this character. His character's the Reverend Harry Powell, and on one hand he has hate, and on one hand he has love, and this guy is a bad dude. So I can't help but always think of that movie every single time I see the Hurt and the heel. I figure it's the same way. It's because in Night of the Hunter, you've got Robert Mitchum who will tell this story of the power of love versus the power of hate, and he just gets very dramatic with it. And so I can't help but see a little bit of that in Bray Wyatt, a little bit. I mean, I don't think he's trying to do Robert Mitchum by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just something I think about when I see the Hurt heel. I'll link you that at some point soon, so you can take a look at it.
I think it's working.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
Of course it's working. It's the only thing that's working now. So where do we go from here? As I did mention, we had a good match between Ali and Andrade on SmackDown. And the thing was I didn't even I'm so used to the way that they build to pay-per-views that the end of the match with Randy Orton RKOing both of them didn't even bother me. That's just par for the course. It's like, whatever, And as much as I dislike Randy Orton sometimes when he gets involved in certain types of matches, it's just like, that's just, typical build.
Is there any scenario where Randy Orton winning the Money in the Bank briefcase makes sense?
Does it ever make sense? No, not in my opinion. No. He doesn't need the push.
So what do you do with Randy Orton after Money in the Bank? Is there somebody in that match that makes a good feud with Randy Orton?
Ali. He's got a lot of unfinished business with Ali. I think that makes the most sense.
But I don't know. I feel like they've kind of decided to move away from the Ali Orton thing because they never really revisited it at all. I mean, yeah, they just got RKO'd this week, but I feel like they could have went right back into that feud after he put him out of the elimination chamber. But I feel like they're almost moving away from that. I'm wondering if Orton's going to get another face push against like Andrade, because it seems like they're starting to cross paths a little bit more.
Since when is Randy Orton being a face ever made any sense or ever worked for him?
I don't think his next feud has to be anybody in the Money in the Bank match. I'd like to see him in a feud with Aleister Black. That gets him some credit.
What do you think of Black's promos? What do you think of Black's promos that he's doing right now?
I mean, I really look at it as like Bray Light from the standpoint of I think the promos have been good, and it's almost that absence makes the heart fonder. Like you're looking forward to seeing Aleister Black wrestle again. But unlike Bray, where you're like, oh man, he's been gone for so long, and those promos have been so good, and I want him to just keep up and like just keep building up that situation. And instead of doing that with Aleister, it's like he could come out any time, and I think it would be the right time for him to come back with the promos he's been cutting. They're not promos that like demand that somebody stay in the shadows just continually doing promos. You know what I mean?
It's an interesting approach, because if you look at it, they're doing promos with Aleister Black where Ricochet is getting right into matches. So it's just interesting that they wouldn't kind of have the same approach with the two of them. It's almost like they're experimenting to see which works better, putting guys in matches or putting guys in promos. Now, not to say that I think it's the right choice, because I think Ricochet is more impressive when you put him in the ring and let him do his thing versus giving him a mic. And I think Aleister, he's gotten a lot better at his promos, and I like that he's like creating a persona that's almost, dark and mysterious.
I think it's because Ricochet makes more sense being in the ladder match, because you're going to get that spot.
I think Black could have a pretty good spot too, though. I mean, Black's done some
spots,
stuff,
but not like Ricochet. Yeah. Ricochet, you're guaranteed to get a few spots, and if he hits his finisher off the ladder on anybody,
can he? He can't do the finisher off the ladder. It's a different height. It would totally throw off the rotation, don't you think?
He doesn't have to do it off the top of the ladder. He can do it, halfway up the ladder or 3/4 of the way up. They're still gonna.
That's an amazing move. Like that's a really amazing move that he can hit the timing of it every time. Because if he's off by half a turn, he's landing on his head.
I think what you're more likely to see from the finisher of him is like it doesn't matter how high he is, because it would be a situation where you had like a group of 3 or 4 people down there that he's doing it to. So somehow he gets on a ladder. He does like the you remember the North American Championship ladder match when Velveteen climbed all the way up the ladder, but he wasn't really in a position to grab it. So then he just did a finisher off of it onto somebody. Like, you do a similar type of spot like that where Ricochet suddenly is at the top of the ladder, but he's in no position to get a belt, and he does as many spins as he can because he's going to get caught. Kind of like he did in the the last War Games he was in.
Yeah, off the top.
It's going to be a good spot no matter what. I mean, I look forward to the Money in the Bank ladder match for the men. I think it'll be a good match. I just hope I hope the finish isn't annoying, because there's a couple of finishes that could be annoying. One being Braun Strowman winning. One being Randy Orton winning. And then it's just, if there's some kind of interference that doesn't make sense.
I think we should have a woman that's with somebody. I think Selena Vega should win the match for Andrade in the exact same way that they did the first women's Money in the Bank match.
Couldn't she? She could probably do a spot where she's at the top of the ladder or something, and like she's in the ring. Like
I definitely think
something together.
They should do that spot. I would expect that spot to happen in that match, 100%. Like she does her like Hurricane Run on somebody. It always looks pretty good. I'm telling you what, man, she commits to that thing too. Oh my goodness. There's a couple times I've seen her do that and I'm like, "Oh, wow, she's like super committed to it." Like if she doesn't lock on just right, she's going to like kill herself.
Well, she relies on whoever she's giving it
Of course.
to take it well, like her husband who takes it really well.
Old Alistair. I don't know. I mean, past that, there wasn't much to be excited about. There's not much to be excited about, period. And as you mentioned, like, you know, what is the best case scenario in most of these matches? You know, I mean, is it that a lot of people drop titles? Like, we need to see a lot of titles drop, right? Is that the best case scenario?
The most surprising scenario. That's like.
Do you think that's the most surprising scenario?
I think that's the most surprising scenario for the non-intelligent wrestling fan, for a title to switch hands. The idea is title holders usually defend their titles unless it's like somebody who's that unbelievable to be able to win a match. You know, the idea that Goldberg wasn't going to beat Kevin Owens at, what was it, Fastlane or something like that. It's like everybody knew that title was going to change. But right now, I feel like we're to believe that Kofi's not going to lose. We're to believe that Rollins isn't going to lose. I mean, I don't know that Finn Balor is going to lose. Do you think any of these people are going to lose if you just go by basic, well, good guy, bad guy? Yeah, this is probably a storyline that's not going to, the title's not going to change hands.
Well, we'll obviously save our picks for next week, but I can run down this like predicted card real quick. I mean, Rollins versus Styles. Do I expect Rollins to lose? I would say no. But that's a tough one. I mean, AJ Styles is a perfectly good champion. Seems like a waste of the Rollins run, but then again, I don't know. Does that matter? I don't know that it matters, or if it does or doesn't matter. I think it does for some people.
I don't think it makes
If
sense
AJ
for
wins, the cash
AJ.
in comes quick on AJ.
Which I think if that were to happen, it would more likely happen with a Kofi Kingston losing to Kevin Owens and then having like somebody like Ali or Ricochet have, you know, one, or, you know, at the end, I don't believe that this shakeup is actually going to hold. And like we'll say, there's going to just be one unified front. So at what point do they just roll with that? And, you know, somebody from Raw just cashes in on from somebody on SmackDown, because it doesn't really matter, because there's not really two shows anyway anymore.
Yeah. It'd be a good time to give McIntyre a belt. If McIntyre just come and with the Money in the Bank briefcase and Claymore somebody and just pins him at the end of one of the matches.
I think the one that makes the most sense to me, if you're going to have a belt drop, is have one of Becky's belts drop. And it would specifically be to Charlotte Flair. I'm over the program, but I also know that program turning out that way is the best thing for the women's division. And then don't have Becky and Charlotte fight again.
I'll give you that.
I'm going to.
They're gonna have her lose both belts.
Yeah. Yeah, Steven, I was gonna say the same thing. I'm gonna argue the point that the best thing for the women's division right now is for her to drop both belts. It'd be crushing to her character, but I think they need to do something drastic, and I think that's it.
Well, you say crushing to her character, they've basically already killed the man gimmick. Like, she's not the man anymore. But if they make her drop both belts, they can, for different expression, and let her be off TV for a few weeks, and then have her come back attacking and just beating the hell out of everybody backstage. Not actually having matches, if they could do it right this time. Just have her beating people up backstage and taking people out. And
So recycle what they did wrong, basically.
What about a collusion angle? I think that might be interesting. You haven't
and who?
had much interaction between Charlotte Flair and Lacey Evans and have them collude with each other to help each other in their matches. Because then
Yeah, I mean,
you can
I didn't even
eventually
see Charlotte.
Yeah.
Charlotte didn't even show up this week.
you can eventually build to those two coming to blows because you know that they want that eventually. So why
think
not
that's gonna
start
be
out that
Survivor
storyline?
Series.
Why not start out that storyline right now with a little friendly collusion while they're separated? You know, and they just help each other out, and that's all fine and jolly. And you worry about building that later. And like once it's time to build that, then you can then turn the tides of that storyline. But I think a collusion angle sounds pretty good. It saves the Becky character because it doesn't destroy her character to lose both belts if they colluded against her to get both belts off of her. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like how it was unfair, basically.
Yes.
You know, she's still a badass, but not even a badass could overcome the odds of a 2-on-1 essentially.
Well, it's the revamping of the character, right? If you're really dedicated to the character, well, as we've said, the character's kind of died. I mean, it's not dead because she still comes out, but the essence of the character has died. So as you guys mentioned, her coming back and her beating up people in the back and stuff like that, it's a way easier to get to that point through that collusion angle than it is just from her losing. Because her losing, straight up losing both belts with no interference or anything like that, or no collusion, and then her coming back and then just beating people up, I don't know that storyline makes sense, and I don't think that it's good.
Well, sounds like they're going to do that storyline then. The one-
Maybe. I mean, it's sad to say that might be the case, but I don't know. We'll see. I think it's a golden opportunity to do something like that. You got 2 matches for 2 titles in the exact same night. You know, it's very easy to make people believe that, oh, here comes Charlotte. Charlotte comes out during the Lacey Evans match. You know, maybe somehow it's going to end in disqualification and Becky will retain, but I don't know. Maybe the ref, you know, Becky ducks and the ref gets hit with the woman's right or something like that. Knocks out the ref for a second. And then Charlotte jumps in and her and Lacey Evans beat the hell out of Becky Lynch. Ref comes back too. 1, 2, 3. And then you find another clever way to do it in the next match.
You know, they could do a whole swerve and have Becky retain both belts, come out on Raw talking shit, have Charlotte and Lacey jump her out of frustration, and then have Bayley cash in on her. SmackDown belt.
Well, you're assuming Bayley wins the Money in the Bank.
Well, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Bayley. No offense to Amber Moon, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Bayley.
What makes you think it's going to be Bayley so much?
Because they've been putting her against Charlotte, and they've been building up little things with her and trying to throw her in the middle of it.
What build though?
Only
I mean,
namesake on SmackDown other than Charlotte.
I don't.
is Becky.
I don't think I saw Bayley on SmackDown. Was she on SmackDown or she was with Ember Moon, right? They'd had a tag match?
No, that's Carmella was with
no,
Ember
it was
Moon.
it was Carmella, yeah. Bayley wasn't on SmackDown. So how
Neither was Charlotte.
Yeah, so how are they
Supposed to be
building?
a six-way match. Charlotte and
Previous-
Bayley were supposed to be in that match, but Charlotte couldn't make it, so they took Bayley out of it.
Okay.
Bayley versus Charlotte. For Charlotte to get her number 1 contender spot.
Yeah, they have been putting Bayley more in the spotlight on SmackDown. That'd be a huge push for her to win the Money in the Bank. It'd be an interesting direction for her character. I would hope that they would give it some time to kind of morph into whatever this new character for her is going to be. If it's, you know, a badass Bayley or whatever, because
Be a heel.
yeah,
Just let her win the bank and cash it in on her friend.
Mm.
Like she runs down there like she's gonna save her from Charlotte and Lacey.
Is it her friend though? Because
Is it
I feel like they kind of didn't seem like friends when she came out and had that number 1 contenders match.
I don't think Becky Lynch has friends. I think that's the point of her character. She doesn't have friends. She goes out there and she spouts off at the mouth that I can beat any woman back there and there's nobody who can hang with the man. Like, she doesn't have friends. That storyline literally would make less sense than anything else, because she comes down there to to help. I mean, heck, if she came down there to help Becky, I would say Becky needs to just start beating her ass right away. That would make that storyline better, because it's like, what are you doing out here? This makes no sense.
So who do you think's gonna win it? Amber Moon.
I'm not.
who
I,
makes sense
I'm not.
then?
I don't know that I'm saying Bailey doesn't make sense. I just. I don't know. I'm not. I can't say that Bailey with a cash in. I mean, that helps build a Bailey character to me that's still pretty weak. And when I say weak, I don't mean that her character's weak. I'm saying that the prime trait of her character is that she's weak and that she needs the briefcase to win. She needs to prove herself, and I think she's a perfect example of, even though she could use the briefcase to her benefit, maybe she doesn't need it. Maybe it's better for her to get it the hard way. And I would say maybe the same thing for Ember Moon. I don't know that Ember Moon really needs to win it either. I think it would be great for Ember Moon to win it from my personal fan perspective, but I don't know that with the way that she carries herself that she needs it. Like, I think a organic push of Ember Moon makes a little bit more sense than a forced Money in the Bank push. But you start to run out of people. Yeah, you start to run out of people. But I think Dana Brooke makes a little bit of sense. I'm not saying that she would.
Bailey. If you want Cutter Bailey, she's got to turn heel and she's got to win the briefcase to do it.
Not necessarily. I don't know, man. I mean, because you're talking about all these storylines with her and Charlotte. Well, doesn't that kind of mean that, like, Charlotte actually wins and then Bailey cashes in on Charlotte? She still maintains being a face. Charlotte's a heel. For them to make her anything other than a heel would be them really being stupid with their storylines, because it's what she's really good at.
You know how they've been riding here recently.
Yeah, but they haven't been.
Charlotte
They haven't been messing with
while,
Charlotte.
too.
They haven't been messing with Charlotte. So
Yeah.
They let them do tea time for a while, and that was actually pretty popular. You've actually got a tea time from Charlotte.
yeah, I have. Yeah, I personally have gotten a tea time from Charlotte.
Yeah.
I don't
So,
know.
it
Alexa
worked.
Bliss, Naomi, Natalia, Dana Brooke, Bailey, Mandy Rose, Ember Moon, Carmella. I think the one who makes the most sense is Mandy Rose. I'm not a huge Mandy Rose fan, but she makes a lot of
Ugh.
sense. Her character.
I think I might like that less than Dana Brooke.
But it makes sense, though, doesn't it?
I don't know. I don't know that it makes sense. I
The
think it
only
makes more
thing-
sense for Sonya Deville to cost Mandy Rose the match and them to have some kind of feud, because it feels like they're building towards that on SmackDown next week with the tag match.
Okay. So, all right. So I'm going to do a quick rundown here, and if you have a reason why or why not that person should win or not win the match, let me know it, okay? So
Okay.
Alexa Bliss,
It's been done.
that's why she's not going to win it.
Yeah.
Steven,
She's been away too long. I don't know if she's fully healthy yet enough to come back.
isn't that the perfect reason to win a briefcase? Because a briefcase means you don't have to cash in right away.
Yeah, but that's also dragging it out.
Carmella held the thing forever.
Yeah, but Carmella was still there competing and doing stuff and talking junk, where Alexa Bliss would just be doing a moment of bliss and that's it.
All right. Okay, so the next one's Naomi.
No thanks.
I
She
just don't
already
think she
got-
needs it.
She won that. She won the freaking battle royal for no reason, so she doesn't need anything else. She still
Okay.
needs to be punished.
Okay. Natalia.
I don't know. It's
I
a good
think
wrestler, but
I think she makes a
can't-
little bit of sense.
makes a little bit of sense. But I'm not like excited about it if she would win. Let me put it that way.
Well, yeah, but I want you to try to take that out of it, though. Not about whether
I
you're
can't. I'm
excited
a wrestling
about it.
fan. What do you
Well,
mean?
well, no,
Take out if I'm excited or
I
not.
feel like we do an okay job of stepping back sometimes and saying whether something from a story perspective is plausible, whether we like it or not.
Yeah. Well, everything's plausible. Every single one of these wrestlers is plausible. I can build a storyline around each one of them. It's how hard of a storyline is it to build it. Like the Natalia storyline, I feel like it's forced. I feel like it really wouldn't be that interesting. If it would have came a little bit closer to this whole Hall of Fame fiasco and her dad passing away, yeah, maybe we could put a character around that, put a program around that. But it feels like there's been nothing going on with Natalia. She's just kind of there.
Steven?
Eh.
Eh. So next,
It's a man of many words.
Dana Brooke.
I don't want to have to think that Dana Brooke eventually is going to cash in and be a
Chris.
champion because it's bad enough.
Chris,
it's bad
it's an
enough what
opportunity.
they've done to the tag
Opportunities,
titles.
Chris. Opportunities. But
Say it, wait. If you say it one more time, I might be
Opportunities.
believable. Okay, now I think, yeah, you're right. You're right, Dana Brooke.
here's my only counter argument to you is not so much that it's about her cashing in and winning. She could cash in and lose.
Whoa, that's just such a waste. That's like a crushing blow to a wrestler that's already not good and already has a terrible character and already has no push or program. So let's let her win the Money in the Bank and let her lose. Like that's how Corbin's character died, basically.
But
And we
was
got something
reborn.
good out of it. Yeah, but you really think Dana Brooke's gonna all of a she had another character that was just like Corbin's current character, and it didn't work either.
I think if Dana Brooke wins, Charlotte wins, and she cashes in on Charlotte to play off their history together. How Charlotte basically at the end of that said she'd never make it
Yeah.
without her. She wasn't good enough, and now she takes the belt from Charlotte.
All right, so now we hit our
I
three
think Dana Brooke
people.
makes sense.
Give Dana Brooke a chance.
Here's our three people I think that we're all probably more likely to say makes sense then. Because I would agree with you guys. I got to play devil's advocate a little bit. I would agree with you guys that I don't know that any of those make sense with the exception of Alexa Bliss. I still think that one can make sense. And I don't care that she's already won it once. It's just, that one could kind of work. Bayley. I mean, I already know Steven thinks that Bayley's going to win. You think Bayley's going to win, Chris?
I think it makes sense. I think she did. We talked about this on the podcast a couple weeks ago. I liked the little promo she had with Charlotte, getting a little bit fierce and slapping the mic out of her hand and having a match with her. I would like to see Bayley continue that. She was doing it with Sasha Banks for a little while because they were taking it on everybody, and it seemed like Bayley was the one doing most of the work. And I think they were building towards some kind of heel turn for her. This would be a good time to give her an opportunity and maybe not cash in right away, but at some point maybe befriending Becky and maybe Becky trusting her, and then her cashing in on Becky instead of whoever else has the belt, because maybe it's a situation that Lacey Evans wins the belt and maybe then Becky spends most of her time on SmackDown, and you think that Bayley's like, hey, I won the Money in the Bank and I'm going to go get Lacey for you. I'm going to get Lacey for you. But then what ends up happening is Bayley turns and takes the last belt away from Becky, gives Becky that much more pop and gives Bayley a ton of heat.
I don't know. I mean, I guess if they want to turn her heel, I don't actually think I'm going to get Cutter Bayley. Now, they could still be clever with her name. They could call her like Slugger Bayley or something like that. Slugger Hugger, you know what I mean? But
Slugger Hugger. Oh boy.
It kind of makes sense though, doesn't it? And it might be a good shirt too. Could be.
It's a shirt. Yeah,
you got to do it right. Next one's Mandy Rose.
Makes sense, but I think it makes more sense for her and DeVille to have a feud, break them off, and then let them have their own characters, solos going forward. If you're not going to support the tag division, those two don't need to be together. That's my argument.
You know what my vision of Mandy Rose, like how you make this storyline feel a lot better, is you have Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville that are still this tag team, but she's got the Money in the Bank briefcase. So they're keeping with the tag team strong for the moment. And then when the time is right, Mandy Rose, along with Sonya Deville at her side, goes and cashes in. And then the second she wins that belt, Sonya Deville turns on her. I prefer that. And I know that's a little bit, could possibly portrayed as, no, not really heel versus heel. Because if they work on it and everybody hates Mandy Rose enough, then Sonya turning, it's a heel move, but it would be her facing.
What if you do it like this? What if Mandy's in the match, right?
Yeah.
But before the match starts, what if Sonya is in a panic and goes and gets everybody and says, Mandy's in the back and she's hurt. Somebody jumped her. She's hurt. And then Mandy can't make it out to the ring for the match. So Sonya is the one that wins the Money in the Bank. And Sonya continues to carry the Money in the Bank briefcase, and Mandy doesn't know who jumped her. And they move on. And eventually you find out it was Sonya.
I think that's a hell of a good storyline, and I actually hope that they do that. And if they do that last minute, you guarantee I'm going to change my pick to Sonya Deville.
Yeah.
Because that makes a lot of sense. That's a better story. It's not too late. It's not too late.
I got time.
Yeah. Steven, what do you think about Mandy Rose?
I don't know. I think they want to push her. I just don't think she's ready.
That's Money in the Bank. I think that's why it's the perfect thing sometimes, though.
Just,
I mean,
like Chris said, I think we need a few storyline with her and Sonya against each other before title match.
Why rush it though? I mean, doesn't I sometimes think that
it's the Carmella argument, isn't it?
We have a tendency though as well. I know, and I see what you're talking about there, but I think we also have a tendency too sometimes to be like, well, we need to do this storyline, and we're almost trying to rush something instead of giving it a slow build. Like the truer portion of a story where a friendship breaks in WWE is not that, you have a few episodes where there's some things that sound kind of weird, and then that automatically means that they're going to turn on each other. It's a slow build. It's like thing after thing after thing. It takes a while to do those breakups the right way. So why would we jump so quickly into Mandy versus Sonya? Because I almost feel like if Mandy or Sonya don't have their hands on these briefcases, then why even think about breaking them up? They're too needed for the tag team division if you're going to not follow through with that.
If you're actually going to support the tag division.
I think that they will. I think they've got to get their priorities straight. They're so freaking out about their ratings right now. They don't know what to support. I think they want to support everything, but for whatever reason, they're in panic mode and they can't get their story straight, and it's affecting everything. But I'm going to give them a little bit of a pass on all of that, because I am a fan and I'm going to continue to watch. But okay, so next person, Ember Moon. And I will I'll say straight up, I don't like it. I don't want her to win.
I think it makes more sense now that she took the pin.
I agree. And I think I was talking to you about that the other day, right?
Yeah.
I was saying,
we were talking.
Who else in the women's division that's in that match has taken a pin in the last couple weeks? Anybody?
Bayley.
Did Bayley take a pin? When?
2
How
weeks
long?
ago against
How,
Charlotte.
was it two weeks ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But that brings us back to, two faces that seem like they could have a chance. I just thought, and that's why I had texted it out the other day when we were watching. I'm like, Ember Moon took the pin. Interesting. And of course, Steven started busting my balls saying, "Oh, because you can't have your dream." It's like, okay, whatever. All right, so
I had to bust your balls.
now here's my dark horse for the scary one. The scary one. Carmella. Carmella scares me.
Do you think she goes full heel again, or she stays a face?
I don't know.
I mean, she's money.
But it's the one that I could see them doing the curveball with that I really, really, really don't want them to do the curveball with.
You know, I go back to what I said a little bit last week about how I think these girls need more time in the ring. I remember when Carmella was in NXT and she was having some really good matches with Bayley. And I was impressed that Carmella could actually wrestle. And then she came up to the main roster and I was like, no, she's good. She can wrestle. And the more promos she did and the more times she didn't wrestle, all of a sudden you saw her weaknesses in the ring. And it was apparent that she really wasn't as good as a wrestler as I thought she was in NXT. And I almost feel like with Peyton Royce and how I was always saying that she is the better wrestler in the Iconics and she can wrestle. And now they haven't had to wrestle that much. And there's times I see her in the ring and I'm just like, man, what happened? Like I thought they were better wrestlers. And I have to equate it to how much time they get in the ring in NXT. They're constantly wrestling in NXT. They're constantly in the ring. And when you're on the road with the main show, you don't have that much time to be in the ring working on things. And it shows. And just I'm fearful that Carmella is gonna try to just be that heel character again, which works, but we're gonna go back to a champion that really just can't wrestle all that great. And that's been the struggle with the women's division is they haven't had, other than Becky and Charlotte going at it, two women who can go at it and have great matches, who have great characters and the fans are into. So I agree that she's got a pretty good chance, and I'm with you on being afraid of it, but it's worrisome that we continue to see these champions or Money in the Bank winners who have to, be pushed as a character and less as a wrestler.
Yeah. Well, spoiler alert. I'm almost positive that no matter who it is, whether it's Mandy Rose or Sonya Deville, that's going to end up being my pick for Money in the Bank because I think that for me, that's what makes the most sense.
I hope they put a twist on it. I hope something that leads into Money in the Bank changes the current card.
I would concur with that. There's definitely room for improvement. But I think we talked about that majorly when I was talking about, hey, guess these people I don't want to be in these matches, Those are the people that if you replace them, you could make the matches better.
And what do? They almost replaced Ricochet. Like the one guy that were like, no, he's good. Leave him in there. And
but
we almost got Robert Roode instead.
Well, no, I don't think that's an awful thing. The men's match is a hell of a lot stronger. And you have Finn Balor, and you have Ali, and you have Andrade. If you took away any one of those four, it can still be a good match. Robert Roode at least brings a little finesse, the character-wise, with him. It's a good character. And I don't want that character to, fall through the cracks. The reason that Ricochet fought Robert Roode to me seems obvious is that he lost to Robert Roode and then he got put in the Money in the Bank match and they go, oh, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. We need to have him beat Robert Roode and have it be a match for a spot. And then he just wins and it's like, okay, yeah, now he deserves it. Almost like, oh, we forgot our character continuity, because the writing's bad. Now we got to go back and fix it real quick.
Which, I don't know, could do without. It was fine. It wasn't the worst thing in the world to know that Ricochet had lost a match. I guess I think a lot of it was him also getting put down pretty hard in the promo session that they had a couple of weeks ago. He
I
showed
didn't
his
come here to talk.
weakness. Yeah, then shut up.
I don't know. I enjoyed that.
It was good for the two heels, but I think it's similar to, remember when Roman Reigns and John Cena were cutting promos on each other?
This thing here's called a promo. You need to learn how to do it.
Yeah, it made Roman look bad.
It was such a good promo, though.
It was very good
Yeah.
for him, though.
Oh, it woke him up, right? It definitely woke Roman up, and I think he's cut much better promos ever since. But I don't know that Ricochet is all of a sudden going to be this great on the mic wrestler. I just don't think it's there.
Yeah, I mean, people are kind of who they are, and they might get a little bit better, but they never make it. I don't know that they ever make those huge, huge, huge jumps in any part of their game, I feel like the ones that reinvent themselves and have always had it.
Do you think Aleister Black always had it? Because I remember we talked about him and how kind of shaky he was in NXT on the mic.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a good example. But I don't know that, are his promos amazing? I don't know that his promos are amazing. I just think they're pretty good, though. I mean, he's not out there spitting
They're
like
better.
the most epic promos ever. And his matches went from being like average to good matches. He's been in an epic match, but I don't know that he's been in tons of epic matches.
I think it comes down to who he's in there with.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a team effort. A good match is a team effort.
You talking about, so who's he been in there with that he was the one who really carried the match?
Like fully carried the match?
Like he was the high, like if there's two guys in a match, there's gonna be like the A wrestler and the B wrestler. Ultimately, when Rollins is in a match with anybody, he usually takes the A role. Like he's usually the lead in the match. He feels he's almost like the ring general, and he's doing the spots, and he's the guy that really does the work.
It's going to be interesting because AJ is kind of that same guy, so that's going to be an intriguing match.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know though, but I mean, I don't know that you're an A man just well, I don't know. I mean, what are you thinking?
Well, go down the match card. What matches has he had as a one-on-one match? We got to go back to NXT, right? So he had a Lars Sullivan match, didn't he?
Yeah.
He had one versus Adam Cole.
He had one versus Adam Cole.
That was the street fight. He had one versus Velveteen Dream.
Yep.
He had one versus Johnny Gargano, I believe.
Yep.
Few versus Andrade.
I don't know though. I don't know
the one versus Andrade that he. Yep.
I mean, he's had all good matches, but they're also all those guys are real good too.
Yep. I'm not disputing it. I'm just pointing it out. Like, I think we're right that we're thinking that he's had good matches, but he's not been like that A guy in the match. He's just a really great compliment to that guy. Because Lars Sullivan's the only match where he was probably the one that needed to take that A role, and he did, but it wasn't that great of a match. It did okay. Had that really bad botch.
Lars Sullivan.
Yeah, it was Lars Sullivan. But I think it proves our point that he's a good wrestler, but he's a good compliment wrestler. Where a guy like Andrade has shown that he could be either. He could be the compliment or the lead. Like he really does a good job either way.
Yeah, there was a couple guys in NXT that were like that too. I think Johnny was very much like that. And when they're
like that,
when you're paired up with somebody who's also like that, that's what equals, I think, a 5-star match.
Yeah, like the Andrade and Gargano match.
Yeah, and then Tommaso and Gargano, because they're both the same, like from that perspective.
On a completely different side note, an update today, and it looks like he's ahead of schedule on his recovery. Just saying.
That's good.
Does he come back to NXT or does he go to the main show?
at this point, if he comes back right away, I think it'll be NXT.
Fun times. You know, we've been talking for an hour and a half now. I always like to butt in and talk about that. So we got to
No,
do.
you always like to butt in. You said it right the first
I
time.
know. I butt in all the time. So it's time for us to do, we do it sometimes, our little roundabout where we, kind of talk about what we're looking to see in the next week. So I think I'll start this time. I'm a broken record. Chris and Steven. Where is Cedric Alexander? Where is Buddy Murphy? I'm not going to say the Fandango joke. Where are those two guys? They are so good. And if we're just going to constantly bank on, the same 8 people to be on both shows every single week, then you're very quickly going to lose me, WWE. And I can't wait for AEW to start to give me a taste of something different. So please, you don't have to stuff a bunch of stars in my face to make a good product. Just stick to a story and just work on it. Oh, here's a story. It's not working quite well. If you do it enough, it starts to work. And as much as I'm not a Lars Sullivan fan, and now what you guys are saying, like maybe he's done. Okay. One of the things I was going to say originally on this podcast was the Lars Sullivan stuff's starting to work. It's still working. It's like it's slowly working. Now, we've always agreed that he needs a valet of some sort because on the mic, he's laughable. But, him going in there and crushing people, it's working. So that shows you that a story works. You haven't been messing with Bray, and the story's working. You weren't messing with Sami Zayn until this week, and it was working until you threw it in the garbage. Pun intended. So the difference is when you take time with a storyline, it works. When you recycle the same storyline over and over and over again, it doesn't work. Yes, the crowd loves Becky Lynch. Yes, the crowd loves Kofi Kingston. But if you're going to do that spot every single week, it's not good storytelling. Focus on some other people and give me some better storylines.
Like Roman Reigns or Seth Rollins.
I've been fine with the Roman Reigns stuff. I would be fine with the Seth Rollins stuff. I don't know that I think Rollins AJ maybe hasn't gotten enough time.
Yeah. So I'll go. I think we need to focus on the women in the next week. I like what we've been discussing, where Becky might need to be taken down a peg, and it'd be interesting to see Lacey and Charlotte in the ring at the same time. Set something up where they're both beating up on Becky, and she obviously can't overcome the odds, because I think that's a good lead in to the fact that she has to have 2 matches. It'll be insurmountable, and I'd like to see over the next week both of them in the ring same time, holding the SmackDown in Charlotte's hand, holding the Raw in Lacey's hand, over a beaten Becky Lynch in the ring. I think that'd be a good storyline leading into Money in the Bank, and it makes sense, and it'll add to the underdog story, and it would make me think that there's a possibility that she's really going to lose both belts, which I think leads into some better storylines for women's wrestling. But you can't not have the storyline on SmackDown, which they basically did. They had the tag team match on SmackDown with Mandy and Sonya, but if you don't have the champion on, this is the reason why we need to have the belts on separate shows. It's not working going back and forth. Becky constantly doing that. They're overseas right now, so they should be able to pull this off because everyone's going to be pretty much in the same place. So on top of that, focus on the women, start leading towards this Sonya Deville, Mandy Rose split, and ultimately I'll save the repeat of what I came up with before for next week. But I like the idea of Sonya turning on Mandy, secretly, and then we'll lead into Money in the Bank and beyond.
Well said. Steven.
I think what would make this week great for me is if Joe attacked Ray's son. Then the creepy stalking, but attacked him. Do the mind games. He did them with AJ, and it made that feud worthwhile. Night and all that. Let him attack Ray's son. Let him put Ray's son to sleep.
I like it. I'm all for it.
I just like the viciousness that is Samoa Joe.
I like the viciousness that is anybody. I just wish some of these wrestlers would get a little bit more vicious. Like, you know what? Braun Strowman's a great example. Braun Strowman, I do not want to see you take Sami Zayn. If you're going to beat up Sami Zayn, here's the thing. Don't throw him into a dumpster. Just take a chair out and just beat the hell out of him for like 5 minutes and leave him in like a crumpled mess in the ring. I think that's better than, we're going to have KO in a porta potty and we're going to have, Sami Zayn in a dumpster. I hate those. I hate those bits nowadays. That they don't look nearly as vicious as if they just like. You want to talk about a vicious spot? What about when like Charlotte Flair attacked Ronda Rousey and just kept beating her with a kendo stick? It looked vicious and it was effective. That's what I like about Joe. I think Joe does stuff like that sometimes and it really flippin' works. Why aren't we doing that more with the right people?
The edginess of it. They don't want to cross the line. They're afraid.
Well, they need some fucking competition.
Yep.
So I look forward to it. Although I did say in text, my prediction is that AEW is going to get into a Tuesday time slot, and they're going to let AEW probably go a couple weeks, and then suddenly NXT is no longer going to be a WWE Network show, but maybe like a USA show that airs on Tuesdays. And I think that's how WWE will try to get competitive with AEW.
And that would be a dilemma for all of us, I think, on Tuesday nights.
Especially if they make it so that I can't easily access NXT. Nah, not too much of a dilemma for me, though. I'd watch AEW. I'll let one of you guys watch NXT, and then I can...
I'll watch NXT.
Yeah, and then we can just bring our thoughts,
Bring our thoughts. That's going to be a small conversation.
What, are you saying we don't have thoughts?
Fired.
Gracious, man. He's back, and he's mouthy tonight, man.
He's the boss.
He is the boss.
I'm back and better than ever because it's boss time, but whatever.
Yeah. Chris's new nickname is Christopher. Christopher.
Ugh. That deserves a sign, so.
It's pretty bad. But funny little short story here. My name is Big Baby Jimmy to most of the Bald Monkey crew. And
Big Baby Jimmy.
This name was given to me. It's a stupid story. So I'm just gonna paraphrase it kind of like basically we were gonna go see Infinity War, and we go to this pizza joint and there's nobody in there, and we walk in there, and I have a tendency I like to go and sit at high top tables because my back will hurt sometimes, and so sometimes I want to stand up like at a high top, and you can eat at a high top if you're standing up. So we walk in, and the waitress goes, well, we've got the whole restaurant open. Where do you want to sit? And before I can even say anything, Chris goes, we need to sit at a high top because Big Baby Jimmy here's back might start hurting. And the waitress doesn't miss a beat and says, we'll take care of you, Big Baby Jimmy. And any guy knows that if you're around a bunch of other guys and something like that happens, it's over. It's over. That's my nickname forever. Because the flippin' waitress at the pizza place next to the movie theater decided to just feed into what Chris was saying and call me a big baby Jimmy. Well, I embrace that. I don't actually think the nickname Christopher is going to hold for Chris, but we are at a restaurant the other night. We are getting
Don't
ready to
think the
go
nickname
see.
Christopher is gonna work for Chris.
I don't think.
Yeah, I
Let-
hear
let
it
me-
too.
let me-
Don't
let-
worry.
yeah.
It's his name.
Well, no. I'm saying as
The
a
name's
nickname.
gonna work for you.
as
You
a
look more like a
nickname.
gym.
As a nickname. And hear me out. Let me finish the story. Chris knows where I'm going with this. Almost exactly a year later, me and Chris go to a restaurant. We are getting ready to go see Endgame,
Mhm.
the next movie. And the waitress, she's sitting there, and he's wanting to put something on his tab, and she looks over the counter and he goes, "You're Christopher?" And he cringes. He cringes at her calling him Christopher. And of course I see it and I'm just like, Christopher, Christopher, Christopher. It was amazing. The fact that it was a year later, it was like blew my mind. I'm like,
Eating pizza. We were both. We were
and
also
we were eating pizza
again,
too.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
blew my mind.
Yeah.
So that's your really
Yeah.
really bad big baby Jimmy story of the night. And now
Yeah.
my nickname has been ruined, and everybody's tuned out because the story was so boring that I don't know. This is what happens when we've talked for close to 2 hours.
Yeah, it's too much.
It's too
I have to
much.
ask though, in
It's too
closing,
much.
did y'all enjoy Endgame?
I liked it.
I
It was
thought
good.
I thought it was all right. We can speak more about it when we hang out sometime. I got a lot to
Yeah.
say about it, but
Yeah.
I think overall the experience was a good one. I'm probably a little bit more critical than Chris is about it though.
On that note,
Well, everybody, thank you for listening. If you liked the content, please press like. If
Click,
you're
click,
listening
click,
to it
click,
for the
click,
first
click,
time
click.
and you like what we're throwing down, subscribe for us. We love doing this every day. We love that you like to listen to us. And on behalf of all the big babies around the world, Big Baby Jimmy says, good night.
night.
Night. Have a good one, everybody.
That's